Good morning and welcome to the Knit Shift. My name is Laura and today is Sunday, May 22nd, 2016. If you are new here, welcome. Thank you for checking out my podcast today. And if you're coming back, thank you so much for spending a little bit more time with me. I really appreciate it. Show notes can be found at theknitshift.com. I'm on Ravelry as Yarnstormer and Instagram as Laura Mahalski, and I'll have links to those in the show notes because my name is tricky to spell. We have a group for the podcast over on Ravelry, so you should come and join us. This podcast is available on iTunes and YouTube and is always embedded at my blog. And if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, I would love it if you did. I want to say thank you so much for your feedback on my last episode, episode 54. I kind of went on for a little while about something related to my work as a journalist, and I got a lot of really nice comments, so thank you so much for your feedback about that and being okay with sharing a bit of non-knitting related content. And I do want to say an even bigger thank you to everyone who reached out after last episode where I spoke about body image and self-image and not being so hard on yourself wherever you are in your journey in life. It's important to knit for the body you are and appreciate where you are in life. And I just want to say thank you. Everyone had really lovely, overwhelmingly nice things to say, and I think the message resonated with a lot of you. So thank you so much for everyone who reached out. I really appreciate it. We're all in this, in this journey together where we all need to be nicer to ourselves. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Katie of the Inside Number 23 podcast for really sparking my my conversation about that last episode. So thank you, Katie, if you were to see this. So I have a good bit of stuff to talk to you about today. I have several works in progress, but they're kind of scattered throughout the episode because I took a trip to Northern Virginia on Friday and took 2 classes from Susan B. Anderson, and I'll have a lot to talk about that later on. So I'll have a work in progress to share from what I took 2 classes, one on shawl design your own shawl, and one on knitting folk dolls. So I have a work in progress to share from that. And finally, I have a recipe to share with you guys. It's been a little while since I shared a recipe, but I figured I had a really big success in the kitchen last weekend, so I thought I would share that recipe with you. I have no finished knits for you this week, but I do have one sock. I feel bad calling it a hoe. I know some people love to call it that, but I work in a newsroom. It's not cursing free or anything, but for some reason talk about calling a sock a hoe and I'm like, oh, I can't. Anyway, so I have a finished sock that I'm knitting for a friend. So technically this falls under the parameters of the knit along going on, which again, I'll talk about in a little bit. You can see I've not woven in the ends on this, so it's just kind of loosey-goosey. This is a sock knit from Socks That Rock Lightweight in the colorway Bason or Bason, and it's a lovely red and mustard and brown and eggplant, and I really love how the colors worked up. Really great. And you can see this is where I was last week. I have a little stitch marker on here, so I finished the leg and the cuff, and it really flew off the needles. And this is my basic sock recipe. I cast on 28 stitches because this yarn it's a heavy fingering weight. And I increased until I got to 60 stitches, and then I carried on up the foot. I did a Fish Lips Kiss heel, which is a paid for pattern, but is well worth I think it's $1, maybe $2. And carrying up on the leg. So also with 60 stitches, and then I finished it with 2x2 rib. And Socks That Rock is a 100% superwash merino. There is no nylon in it, which can make it a little tricky for socks, but I think if you knit it at a tight enough gauge, it will be okay. And I have cast on the mate already, and I am well on my way on the foot. I really rushed to finish the first sock Wednesday or Thursday. I think I finished it Thursday, and I immediately cast on the mate because I wanted this to be my travel project with going to Virginia. I'm sorry, with going to Northern Virginia. I'm in Southeast Virginia. And I was driving, but I just wanted to have a knitting project in hand that I could work on in between, before class began, that kind of thing. And I'm glad I did because I knit pretty much, from these fingers on up, like 4 inches or so. So yeah, I'm very pleased with these, and these are for a friend who just moved to Philadelphia for a new job, and she's very excited. She knows about them because I gave her the skein of yarn on her next to the last day of work. She's a former colleague. I gave her the skein of yarn, and then I said, now I need to take it back because these are your future socks. So she was a good sport about it. So, oh, I'm dropping some stitches. I just seem to have pulled the needle out of some stitches, so let me get these back on. Sorry, I'm just focusing here. I might edit this out here. Okay, 20 minutes later. Not really, but the stitches are back on the needle, so I'll sort the rest of that out later. And I am carrying this project around in a little I think it's called a dumpling bag. I got this at a yarn store in the Outer Banks of North Carolina called Knitting Addiction. I don't know who made the bag, but unfortunately the person no longer makes these bags, which is a shame because I love this bag so much. It's got this great fabric and a purple zipper, and I love the little detail stitching here, and it is lined. So it really is the perfect sock project. Next, I'll remind you about our knit along going on in the Ravelry group. It's a friend along, so it's a chance for you to knit something for a friend. It could be you knit yourself something that reminds you of a friend, or you purchased the yarn with a friend, or someone gave you the yarn, a dear one gave you the yarn. You can make it apply in so many ways, and it seems that a lot of folks in the Ravelry group are making gifts for people, which I think is really, really lovely. So we have we're using a hashtag. It began April 1st, and we are using a hashtag on Instagram, hashtag TKS friendalong for the knit shift, TKS. And we have several prizes, including a skein of Dream in Color Smooshy in the colorway Scorched Lime, which is a lovely mucky green sock weight yarn, and 2 patterns. One of them is Seeds of Change from Clothesline Designs, and the other is a pattern of your choice from Boston Jen's Ravelry shop. So thank you to Boston Jen and Quilter Caroline for those generous prizes. I really appreciate it. And the knit along will end May 31st, and I will draw a prize from the FO thread, and I will draw a prize from the chatter thread. So stay tuned for that. I think I will have the drawing in 2 episodes because I want to let it run through the end of May, and a few more days, about 8 or 9 more days to participate. So if there's something little you want to make, now's the time to cast on. And finally, that brings us to yarns. I was at Fiberspace, and well, this isn't yarn, but I bought a new bottle of Allure Prairie Breeze scented fiber wash, and I really love this. I had a miniature bottle, and this is the first time I bought a large bottle, and you can see it was $16, which I'm happy to pay because it's 16 ounces, so it's quite generous, and I think this will last a long time, and it smells amazing. It's just a really lovely, I don't even know how to describe it, but it smells like spring and a little bit of grass and just a very light scent of flowers, and I totally get the Prairie Breeze vibe of it. And they do have an unscented version of this, and they do have a woodland, I think it's called Woodland Mist, and I do have a little bottle of that, but I love this so much I used the entire mini bottle of Prairie Breeze and haven't even cracked open the Woodland Mist. So I'm all set on wool wash for a little while, but the real thing I bought was a skein of Miss Babs Yowza, and this is a light worsted weight, and it is probably called Yowza because this thing is enormous. It's taller than my head, it feels like. And it is 560 yards, 8 ounces of 100% superwash merino wool. And the colorway is Oyster. And you can see it's just a lovely semi-solid gray, just really pretty. And the reason I bought this is because, and I'm going to be talking about Susan B. Anderson a lot in this episode, but on one of her recent episodes of her podcast, she shared 2 skeins of Yalza and said that she's planning a design for a shawl that features 2 skeins of Yalza. And the reason I knew I had to knit this shawl was the skeins of yarn she had. One was kind of a black and white variegated, and the other was a really bright multicolor skein, and the colorway of that was called Funny Papers. So between Funny Papers and the black and white skein, she decided to design a shawl called the Sunday Paper. And I work in journalism. I'm in charge of the newsroom on Saturdays. The Sunday Paper is my responsibility Saturday nights. And I've never been super swayed by pattern names, or, I know a lot of people love Harry Potter colorways or Doctor Who. I've never been super swayed by that, but when she said Sunday Papers, I was like, take my money, Miss Babs, because I am knitting that shawl. So I only bought 1 skein because this skein was already in my stash. And I did not have this with me when I was choosing my yarn on Friday at Fiberspace, but I trusted that a gray would go well, and I feel very good about that. I have no idea what this shawl looks like. I just know that I desperately want to knit it based on the name alone. So I think these will look, I'm guessing it's striped or textured in some way, and I think this nice oyster gray will go really well with it. This is Yalza, of course, and the colorway is Berlin. I picked this up at SAF in October last year in North Carolina. And the overarching color, I would say, is blue, but it's got these great bits of red, and I love this bright yellow flash right here. And then there's bright blue and kind of some gray speckles and this lovely sage green. And it's just, it's so squishy and soft, and I'm resisting. I wish I could cast on whatever she hasn't even designed it yet, and I'm itching to cast it on, so I need to slow my roll a little bit. But I think these 2 massive skeins of yarn, this is going to be an enormous shawl, so I'm very excited about it. Oh, and there's this lovely, the green gets a bit darker up here, which I like. So really excited about this. Really can't wait to see what she comes up with. So I'm ready. I'm ready, Susan. Not that you're gonna see this, but I'm so ready for the Sunday Paper shawl. And that finally brings us to talking about my trip to Fiberspace in Alexandria. So I went with my friend Lennis. She took the shawl class with me, and then I alone took the afternoon class. Lennis went shopping and wandered around Old Town. If you don't know Alexandria, it is across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., in Virginia proper. And it's King Street is the main street, and there are tons of shops and restaurants, and just it's tree-lined streets, and there's very historic homes nearby, and it's just really, really lovely, and it's a great place to spend an afternoon or a whole day, really. And Fiberspace is on King Street in Alexandria, so there's a metro stop nearby. I believe there's like a water taxi. It is right on the river, so it's really lovely, and I would love Fiberspace to be my local yarn store, but I would spend so much money there. And it's just such a beautiful shop, and they have dedicated classroom space. And we were around a long table, but it didn't feel cramped. Everyone had their own workspace, and there were 20 of us, but it didn't feel super tight, which was nice. So I took 2 classes. And I should say first, it was so exciting as I was walking in to the store with Lennis. I saw 2 people who I met at the Virginia Beach yarn retreat or yarn getaway. I met them, and I had spoken, was it March or February? I can't remember when it was, but I think it was President's Day weekend, so probably February. But there was a yarn retreat at Virginia Beach, and the organizers asked me to come and speak and talk about podcasts, so I did, and that's where I met these ladies. So it was really nice to see Julie and Angela again. So hi, ladies. It was so nice to see you and see a familiar face. And I also got to see Emily from the Fibertown podcast who came. And unfortunately, she had to leave early. She had family stuff going on. So I'm sorry I didn't get to see you more, Emily. We snapped a selfie, which is on my Instagram, and she was on her way. So it was nice to see some folks I knew there. But as for the classes, we took a shawl, Lennis and I took the shawl design class, and it was so lovely. Susan was so organized, and I should say first and foremost, Susan is just as lovely, if not more lovely, as you would expect from her podcast. She's just so gracious and kind and warm and just such a wonderful teacher, and the whole day was so wonderful. It was really, I've been in such a good mood all weekend because it was such a nice day to take knitting classes and be around knitters, and just kind of, you get that glow about you from like a really good knitting experience. So it was wonderful overall. So the class was very well organized. She gave us several handouts, all of which are so helpful. You know, she gave us a list of various shawl shapes, and she gave us a multi-page handout basically from cast-ons to binding off, and lots of advice on how to proceed. But the biggest takeaway for me was that you don't have to plan it all out in advance. You can just kind of knit and see where you go. So as someone who loves to have a plan and be organized and, know exactly what I'm doing when, it was very freeing to hear that. So I really just kind of plowed ahead, full steam, and by the end of the day I had, the start of a shawl. I chose to knit a half circle, a semicircular shawl, and it ended up being, instead of being a semicircle, it's kind of growing outward. It's not a full circle or anything, but it's kind of it looks kind of like a Pac-Man, with a little Pac-Man mouth to it, if you could picture that. So I won't show you that because it's kind of a work in progress, and I don't know that I'm about to create my own design, but it's like scribbles basically. It's like it's a start of a shawl. It's not a shawl yet, so I'll save that for another day. So it was a wonderful class, very helpful. And then did I have anything else I wanted to say about that? I think that was it about the shawl class. And then I wanted to just share with you my work in progress from the other class I took, which was learning to knit folk dolls. So I'm not sure which book these are from, to be honest, but these are the dolls we learned to make. And they are so sweet. You can see they have leggings on, and they're wearing dresses and little hand knit cardigans, and they have shawls wrapped around them, and they're just so sweet. So, and they're wearing Little Mary Jane. So basically the way the second class was structured was that we just started the doll and kept knitting, and I am so pleased with how my doll is progressing. I'm on the waist, and I'm about to separate for the legs already, which is very exciting. So this is the start of the round. That's her little choker, her little stitch marker necklace there. And you can see it's a seamless doll, which I love. I don't want to seam. I don't want to deal with that. So you start with the head, and it's kind of a yoke sweater construction, and then you go on and just knit down the body, and you'll come, you put the arms on waist yarn, and you can see that I already have the doll stuffed. And Susan talked a lot about the importance of not overstuffing your doll. And the yarn I'm using for this is just a Knit Picks Sport Weight acrylic yarn. I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me right now, but I'm using it in this lovely cream shade, a lovely teal, and a gray for the stockings. And I think even though the dolls in the patterns have striped stockings, I think I'm going to just knit gray stockings for mine. Mostly because I'm lazy and I don't want to switch colors every so often. So I'm very eager to keep working on this because I don't want to lose momentum, so I'm very pleased with this. Oh, and the last thing I want to talk about the class. So you guys remember how several episodes ago I was knitting a pale blue pair of socks and I didn't say who they were for, and I said, I'll tell you guys about it later. And I really hemmed and hawed about telling you guys about it in advance, and I'm kind of glad I waited because it was so exciting. So the socks I knit, and if I took a photo of them, I'll insert it here. I don't know that I did. But the socks I knit out of Lydia sock yarn were for Susan B. Anderson. I apologize in advance because I'm going to sound so cheesy, but I think she's just such a lovely part of the knitting community, and I love her podcast, and she just seems like such a lovely person. And having met her, I now know that she is. I wrote her a little card and wrapped up the socks, and I gave them to her in between our classes. She was so surprised. I tried to, and I was so nervous, you know. I felt like I was starstruck. I didn't feel like I was. I know I was, because I tried to blurt out why I think she's so wonderful, and you know, and the card expressed it much better than I ever could verbally, you know, speaking. So I just said, I think you're so wonderful, and I just wanted to make you something. And you guys, she was so surprised. She was just, I think she was really stunned, and she was so sweet about it, and just was so appreciative and thanked me for them, and gave me a big hug at the end of the day before I left. And she was just so lovely, and I can't say enough good things about the classes with her. So if you ever get the chance to take a class with her, you really should, because she's wonderful. She's really wonderful. And I'm so glad that I kept the socks a surprise, and I have a photo of us, and I will try and stick it in here at this point. Just a little travel update. My recording schedule might be a little tricky next weekend because I am traveling to see family next weekend, and I won't be able to record as normal on Sunday and Monday, so I don't really know how that will work. I also wanted to let you know I will be going to Texas in August. So I'll be in Dallas, I'll be in Fort Worth, and the Austin area. So if you have any recommendations of yarn stores, I'm all ears. I visited Mad Tosh Yarns in Fort Worth when I visited Texas in December, and they have since closed. They closed about 2 weeks after I visited, which is really sad because it was such a marvelous store. And when we're in Austin, I do plan on going to Hill Country Weavers because I hear that's a great store. That brings us to a segment called Delish. I had, if I may say so myself, I made a really tasty dinner last Monday night, I think it was. I was surfing the web, surfing Pinterest, and I found a recipe. You know, I like recipes with 5 to 6 ingredients, you know, and it's one of those recipes everyone says, oh, it was so easy and it's so delicious. Like I'm lazy and I really want that payoff of a really easy meal. I found this recipe on NewYorkTimes.com for a recipe by the wife of Andrew Zimmern, who is a TV host on the Travel Channel, and he travels around the world and tries foods that most Americans would never have the chance to eat. I think the show is called Bizarre Foods. So this is a recipe from his wife, and I apologize for not knowing her name. But it involved chicken thighs, white wine, mustard, shallots, grape tomatoes, and tarragon. And basically you cook the chicken and you kind of put a little bit of flour on it to give it a little bit of a crisp edging. And you cook it in a little bit of butter. So right there, you're off the bat, you know it's going to be good. And then you take the chicken out of the pan and you add shallots. And you basically caramelize the shallots. And they're whole shallots. They're not chopped. You caramelize them. And then you add some wine to deglaze the pan. And you add some Dijon mustard. Did I say mustard was an ingredient? I think I did. But you add some mustard and kind of mix it up and make a sauce. And you add the tarragon, add the chicken back in, cook it for like another half hour, take the lid off, let the sauce reduce a bit, and it makes a really delicious sauce. And then at the very end, you put in cherry tomatoes that you've sliced in half, and they kind of just add a little something to the sauce. So it's really delicious. It sounds kind of weird, but the wine and the mustard were so delicious, and I think it could be easily modified. The recipe called for bone-in thighs with skin, and I used boneless, skinless thighs and had no problem. But I think it could also work well for chicken breasts, if that's more your speed. So I just used thighs because it was a little cheaper, and it was a more easily digestible small portion, basically. So they were delicious. So I highly recommend it. So I think that was everything. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening to my tales of cyberspace adventures and gushing over Susan B. Anderson. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you soon. Bye.